Welcome to Evolve Your Blueprint,
where we explore the concept of evolving
and discuss our journey as individuals from diverse cultural backgrounds.
Our mission is to bring real conversations,
relate through storytelling,
and empower you to evolve with us. Let's evolve together.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to Evolving Your Blueprint, and welcome to all of those who are new joining us today. Today's episode is super special and close to our heart. We're going to be talking about how you evolve your blueprint and get unstuck. So I'm curious for all of you here today, what does getting unstuck mean for you, and share a little bit about it?
I mean, I've experienced it multiple times in my life. And what it means for me to be stuck is specifically, there's moments that I've had in my life where I've hit, I guess, what's called rock bottom in different areas, my professional life, my personal life. And I think it's those moments where I'm hitting a wall, right? That's kind of some type of meaning for me. When I think about stuckness, this repeating pattern of things or of feeling, and that can be within myself, even outside myself, right? Yeah.
I mean, I think getting stuck can be something deep, and I think getting stuck can be something as, what the heck do I wear? I feel stuck. I'm overwhelmed, and I know that sounds silly, but I'm also thinking about just day-to-day things, where I don't know, it's what do you wear? Or, what am I going to eat today? And it's sometimes depending on our mood, right? Something so small can really impact how we feel that day. But I think getting stuck, being unstuck, it could be a lot of different things. It could be something very specific, right? It could be specific as there's a specific problem and I don't know how to get to, from A to B. I think sometimes it's also just this feeling, I don't know what else to call it, of blahness, meh. I don't know really where I'm going, feeling lost, but that's kind of what comes up for me. And definitely, like you said, VD, have experienced feeling the sense of stuckness a lot in my life. And I think the more that I become familiar with what being stuck means, I think I can point it out more. You know?
No, I agree with all of you. It's being stuck. It can mean so much, and it can be so casual, right? What am I going to order at the restaurant today? Right? What? On the way over here to the podcast, literally, I'm in my car, and I'm like, okay, what music do I want to listen to on just the drive here, right? I know set the vibe, right? It is something so silly maybe, but I kind of want to make sure I'm in a good headspace, a good vibe as as we're doing this today. So I remember thinking all right, I'm do I want to do XM today? Do I want to do radio? I'm no. So I pull up my Spotify account and I'm then I was stuck with two. I'm which one? There is this deep house station that I love, and this new wave station, which totally different vibes, right? But I ended up doing the deep house today. Anyway, but yeah, something so simple, right? Feeling stuck. And I think to your point that you mentioned, Kelly, it's this thing of it can also bring up some deeper stuff for us. Am I stuck in my life right now? A lot of clients, what I see in therapy, that's one of the biggest things. They're I don't know what it is. I don't even know why I'm here necessarily in therapy, but it's this feeling of stuckness. And I think most people, we can identify with that feeling of stuckness at some point in our life. So I think I'm really excited about today's topic.
I think that's such a good point that you brought up, because for myself, getting stuck was always in the moment. It was having trouble choosing something, or it is trying to make a decision, whatever it should be. But stuckness can be larger periods of time. So when I reflect back on my own life, there was years where I felt my parents would always say, you're stuck in a rut. And so it's you're stuck in this plateau and you're not going anywhere. So I think that on two levels, on a shorter time span and a longer time span, getting stuck can happen on both levels in a lot of ways.
I found myself getting more stuck once I got to the part of adulthood that felt that there wasn't a set plan, right? For so long, if we're people that choose to go to work, or if we choose to go to college, right? There may be a more set plan. And so for me, I think it was like this trajectory of like, okay, what's next? What's next? Okay, for me, I chose education, right? And so it was high school to then, going to college to then grad school. After grad school, it felt very, it felt easy in the sense of I knew that there was still a different milestone. I wanted to get licensed, right? And so I wanted to go get a job that would allow me to get hours to get licensed. But then after that, when there stopped being a very set plan of this is what you do, the sense of stuckness, anxiety really began to pop up for me. And it was really weird, right? Because I don't know if you can all relate to this of feeling like you're checking off boxes or doing the right thing, and then you arrive to the right thing, and it's like, wait, this wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And if this isn't what it is, then where do we go from here? Which is to your point, Alejandro, a lot of clients like ourselves, right? It's like, I feel lost and I don't know exactly what I'm lost with. It's just, I'm not sure what I'm doing and where I'm headed. And to your point, Brandon, it can be a moment or it could be a prolonged sense of I don't know, and that really impacts our mental health, our body, todo, everything,
Yes.
It's like almost like this expectation that we have in ourselves, right? I want to be further along than where I am in my life right now. What that actually looks like, I don't know. Right, but it's something further along, and sometimes we can attach the visuals, right, like the wealth, the money, etc. That's an easy thing to kind of look at because it's so concrete. You can just see it with our eyes, but most of the time, it's a deeper meaning as to what do I want to get to, and that's hard to figure out. It really is.
Yeah, as Alejandro, you were talking, what stood out to me is, what is that next thing, right? And a lot of clients do come and see us because they're feeling stuck. And we see therapists or we see other providers for the same reasons ourselves, right? But what stood out to me as you were talking is this like level of not being present in the moment. And like, what's that other thing that I need to check in the box?
Yeah.
What's that other thing that I need to still do? And it's this constant doing, right? That we forget to just take a deep breath and be in the moment and be in the now and be present. And that can be very hard because there's like so many levels in our lives. There's like family, there's friends, right? Career. And I think bringing it back to you and where you are at and how are you feeling. What's this stuckness all about?
It's so interesting is like everybody's talking. I can't help but think of like how we all handle stuckness in a different way. But I'm curious, Vidi, because you have a background in doing a lot of like holistic type work as well. So like your body, like what are you noticing with yourself and others that they're noticing in their body? What's their body telling them?
So as an EMDR therapist, and I work with a lot of mind-body connection modalities, I always ask my clients, where do you feel that in the body? And a lot of them are like, what do you mean? Like, I don't feel anything, right? And it's like, it's okay. Even not knowing, just not knowing it's okay. It's like we're searching for this answer sometimes, right? And sometimes it's about discovering that answer. It's about evolving yourself. It's about rediscovering yourself. And there's a part of us that sometimes needs to die in order to bring in this new version of you, this evolution of you. And with holistic healing and connection with the body, I let them know that it's important to give moments and space to just feel and notice what comes up without questioning it, without judging it, because we have been subconsciously, right? Like there's so much self-judgment that happens, right? So it's a process, but definitely getting curious about yourselves is very important.
It's crazy. Like in describing being stuck, like I shared that example, right? Just choosing the playlist, right? So for me, when there's moments I feel stuck in my life, and again, it could be some of the ways that I notice it, and I've had thankfully like people in my life that helped me figure this out. But I notice I avoid. I avoid a lot. Like I'll get in my head. Maybe there is a task that I need to do, right? I gotta run payroll, right? So
Yeah.
I'm like, sometimes that can be so daunting to do, and it isn't. When I actually do it, it's not, right? So, but my point is like I can find ways to avoid, to distract myself, to do anything else that I know I need to do, or I get in my head about it and I start, daydreaming about, oh, this is kind of cool. I want to go outside right now instead, right? And some of that can have some flavors of ADHD for sure, but it's really this piece, I think, and I wonder who can relate to this, but it is this thing of when I do feel stuck, some of my parts inside just like to avoid,
Yeah.
procrastinate,
Yeah.
right, and it can be so
I
so
see you.
right, so like
I see
it's
you.
so easy to do, right?
Yeah.
Coffee helps, though. I'm not gonna lie, coffee does help.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that. I wish I could say that I'm the person that immediately does. Like, there's a problem and I'm going to go attack it. I am too like you, where I think that I go inwards. I go inwards and it feels so overwhelming and I distract my mind. And I think that for me, I talked about how one of the things that I really have been thinking about a lot is that an intention is just an intention without if there's no action.
That's right.
Right.
That's
and
right.
and I think that the reason is because I do a lot of what you're describing. I feel like it's almost like my shutdown behavior of I go into my head, think of all the possible conclusions, catastrophize. My body gets dysregulated. And with my body dysregulated, I want to distract, then I distract, then I prolong. Then when I prolong, I begin to feel worried about what this mean if I've left it off for so long. And so it's like this cycle of staying stuck. And for me, I think that it's two parts. Part of it is acknowledging that for myself. And then it's being courageous enough to talk about it with somebody so that there's not so much shame and embarrassment. I don't know, maybe I'm not embarrassed, but it's more like weight.
Yeah.
It feels like heaviness and weight. And so being able to then tell someone, hey, I'm kind of having a hard time with this, or I've been in my head about this. That is what then helps me get a little bit unstuck because it's not just in me anymore.
Yeah.
But dang, I don't like being stuck. It's a really crappy feeling, I think. Unless it's about music, then it's not that serious,
It's
Although
not.
I have a feel good.
Yeah.
It's literally on my Spotify. It's called Feel Good
Feel Good?
playlist.
Nice.
Donde it's basically anything and everything under the sun, but it just makes me feel good.
I
So
love
it could
that.
be a sad song that makes me feel good, or it
Sure.
could be like a moving song that makes me feel good. But I've identified music as something that I can get myself unstuck with if
Very
I
cool.
set the vibe there because it's feel good.
I love it.
Music is powerful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It really is, yeah.
Well, just a second, but clothes though, like getting dressed, that's a different type of stuck.
Oh,
Because
clothes?
I've witnessed.
Well, I'm always
We
texting
carpooled.
Brandon. Like, what should I wear? I texted you this morning. I text him all the time. Like, what are you wearing, Brandon? It's like it's because you know what? I feel like it's something silly and it's something exterior, but I also feel like it's a form of expression.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think that I find fashion to be a form of voice expression, and sometimes I'm not feeling it, and I can feel stuck because I can have an idea of what I want to wear and it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the feeling.
Yes, it is the feeling.
It's the feeling in your body too.
Yeah.
I think I said this in our chat. I had two outfits going back to fashion. I had two outfits for the first episode, right? And I'm like, okay, I don't know which one, but I'm going to try both on the morning of and see which one feels good to my body and feels good to me because that's my decision. And that's what I did. So it sounds like for you, the same, the feeling of it.
I drive my family crazy though because
Yeah.
last night I was trying on all these outfits for this podcast and my dad was like, "Aquí viene la modelo, let's see what's the first one,"
Fashion show.
And my mom was like, "Outfit number 1," and they were like, "Okay, you've tried on a million outfits, like what is it?"
Yeah.
And fun fact, I didn't wear it after all, so so I didn't have anything to wear, and then I decided this was it today. So
Very cool.
I'm curious for you, Vidi. Like for you, like what is your unstuck kind of go-to responses?
What I do, I give myself space to just let me feel whatever that is. And that can be through meditation, that can be through breath work. It can be in so many different ways. But I realized that a moment that I had that I felt very stuck, and it was my like breaking point in my career, was was that I wasn't allowing myself to feel. That I was constantly on the go, go, go. And I wasn't giving myself space to just be me, and to feel angry, to feel sad, to feel the rage sometimes, and not judge it. And not have shame behind any of those emotions, because sometimes there's shame behind anger, and just treat it like any other emotion. So allowing myself to really just feel it and give space for that, because if I give space for that, then I can show up differently.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true. And that really resonates with me, the go, 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 because for those of you who know Kaylee in particular, because I see her all the time, it's just like this notion of like, I thrive in chaos. So I am always like going. When things get tough, like I'm going to be tougher in that moment. And I think it's tied back to upbringing and
Yes.
those
For
sure, for
experiences
sure.
that
Culture.
happen, right? And culture
Culture.
too.
Absolutely.
That like, you know, if something happens, you fix it. There's no time to sit there and kind of, you know, cry about or whatever it should be. So it's I'm a product of my environment in a lot of ways. But also, oh no,
Even
please.
allowing yourself to cry,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Like there's no time to cry.
Yeah.
Like our relationship with time, as
Oh,
simple
yeah.
as that, right?
Oh, yeah. No, that's so true. Right. And then I think in some ways, chaos has always provided me this structure of chaos. There's an end. So I know I can work so,
Yeah.
you know, hard and so fast for
Yeah.
this long, and then it ends, versus like calm and peaceness. Like
Yeah.
that, you don't know when that's going to end in some ways. And so that's a lot more uncomfortable in some ways. And so, you know, I try to do what you just mentioned of like really sitting there and
Yeah.
embracing the feelings. But such an important conversation that we're having today.
Yeah.
You know, it's I can't help it as you're sharing this, think about how we started our podcast today.
Yeah.
Right? Like today, it was behind the scenes here, but Vidi led us into this amazing, I think amazing, calming Reiki session, right? Or how would you describe it?
Self Reiki, just
Self-Reiki.
much more. I mean, somatic too, right? Self touched to certain parts of your body to connect with yourself. Yeah.
Slowing down, essentially.
Slowing
It
down.
was a great kind of grounding exercise, right? To
Yes.
just kind of get us, hey, because it's so easy to get into that go-go, like you're saying, right? It's hard to just sit in the calmness, right?
Yeah.
And of course, when there's cameras up in our face too, that may
help.
add a little bit to it, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. No, even when we were doing the guided Reiki work that you were just doing, I can see myself like peeking out of like one eye, like are my hands where they need to be? Like, what's everybody else doing?
That's like the perfectionist part of you.
All parts are welcome.
Oh yeah.
All parts of you are welcome. Yes, without judging yourself too, right? And feeling safe to do.
Yeah.
And to be silly and to get it wrong,
Yeah.
right? Just to get it wrong, and that it's okay to get it wrong.
Ugh, yeah.
There's something there, Alejandro.
No, it's this piece of you know, we're talking like how to, you know, feeling that kind of stuckness, feeling that the discomfort, like we're talking about here. I think brings up the piece of how do we get out of that, right?
Yeah.
Self-regulation, like we
Yeah.
just did with you earlier, before behind the scenes. The question that comes up for me is how do we know we need to do this? How do we know we need to get unstuck? Or the question that also comes for me is like, why am I stuck right now?
Yeah.
And you know, that doesn't just come automatically. It takes obviously some grounding, some intention, some like regulation.
Yeah.
But eventually, I ask myself that question: if I'm feeling stuck right now in this, whether it be a playlist, sure, that's kind of silly, right? But something a little deeper in my life, why am I stuck? Usually for me, it's because what I need to do is either very overwhelming, it's very difficult, it's hard, it's scary, if I feel
New.
some fear, something new can be very fearful for me. So a lot of these kind of emotions that come up, these parts of me feel like, oh, okay, I got to jump in and protect Alejandro. So let's kind of,
Yeah.
let's watch a video. let's do anything, right? Anything else. But
Yeah.
over time, I've learned through my, and again, people around me have helped. But this idea of like, okay, if I'm noticing I'm being avoidant, or if I'm noticing I'm feeling stuck, it's usually because something's happening that I feel uncomfortable doing, and kind of managing that takes a lot of vulnerability,
Yeah.
right? To like actually look at myself and say, hey, Alejandro, you're feeling some fear right now. It's scary. This is new to us. You know, we can do this. It's going to be difficult. It's almost like this internal pep kind of coaching job, right?
Yeah.
Addressing the different parts of myself that maybe feel a little fear, anxious, anxiety, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of willingness to step into that. Okay, what is it going on? Why am I avoiding this? Why am I feeling stuck? It's probably because I feel some significant internal discomfort. And then once I kind of step into that and like look at that, then I can start figuring out right now what, right?
Yeah. One of the things that popped up as you're talking about this is earlier I was like, I see you, right? Like I relate to that a lot. I think sometimes we don't, at least I'll speak for myself or even clients that I see, I think sometimes we don't allow ourselves to sit with it because, okay, so I identify that I'm angry, or I identify that I'm sad, or I identify that I'm scared, and now what, right? And so I think it's a whole journey to really get to a place of what do I do with this, right? It's really special, Vidi. I think that you have, these tools that you do for yourself, you teach. I find myself I'm a very open person to healing practices and things of that sort. And I noticed that sitting here and being guided into regulation, I'm down. Like, I was in it. I was not peeking, Brandon. I was just like, I'm just going to trust this person to guide me, to regulate me before we have these cameras in our faces, like you said, right? Yeah. But it's the practice of doing it with yourself that's hard sometimes. And especially for people who don't have those tools, sometimes people have access to learning different things or getting therapy or different types of healing, but sometimes people don't. And so I think that that's why there can also be a lot of avoidance because we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and then we don't know what to do with the vulnerability, So what has all of your journeys been like in getting there? Like I'm even curious for you, Brandon, right? Who you're sharing, culture, family upbringing. It's like, I've been taught to just get it together kind of thing, So it's like, where do you begin to learn? Where do you begin to learn? What do you begin to do? I don't know, for all of you, I guess, but I'm curious because you had mentioned that.
I think when I look back, a lot of it is like the work that like Vidi was talking about. It's like learning to become in tune with my body as much as I could. Then I think, as we were all talking earlier today, like there's these kind of core elements of vulnerability, community, accountability, and all these things. And so a compilation of all of them. And what's so interesting is even as all of us talked, in the past, like we've all embraced these certain pillars in certain ways. And so for me, at least, like the way I became comfortable with being stuck was through the support of others, of having mentors and people like, because I cannot do it alone. But once again, being raised in a house where you're taught to do it alone, it was very contradictory in a lot of ways. And so once again, the vulnerability comes out because you have to be vulnerable in some ways. But I think for me, if I think of one person, I talk about him often as my mentor, was like serving as like a person in the community that said like, hey, like even as a man, like you can cry, you can be vulnerable. You're not going to know everything. And that front that you put on that everything, I understand like that's not cockiness, that's fear that you're showing right now. And I think somebody verbalizing that to me, it's almost as like you can kind of take that breath and like the weight is taken off your shoulders.
Like you
Such
felt
a great point,
seen.
Brandon. Fellas, rewind what Brandon just said right now. Rewind what Brandon just said. That's gold right there.
On repeat.
That. Yes.
It'll be a short clip for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think as you were talking, going into even how to get unstuck, right? Body. Body is one of the main things now. I didn't know this before. I started really connecting to my body when I had a major moment in my life where I felt stuck. And there was like one of these breaking points essentially was when I was doing school-based mental health. So I did school-based mental health for 10 years. And when I left into private practice full time, but that transition and my body, even before that, 2 years even before me making that step, that leap of faith, my body was already talking to me. My body was feeling certain pain on certain areas of my body, like my elbow, my back, parts of my body starts to talk to me, sensations. And I started to really listen, or else things were going to get worse. And then I started to really self-reflect and go inward, and where in my life am I feeling unhappy? Where am I overworking myself? Where am I burning out? Where am I giving, and not feeling seen, heard, and it's not being reciprocated, even in a work environment, right? So at that school district, that last year, there was a lot of situations that happened. I experienced a loss of a client that really hit me. And that was just a big turning point for me in my own healing journey, where I started to question a lot of my worthiness as a person, as a professional. And I'm like, okay, there's something here deeper, obviously. So my body started talking to me, and I had to listen and give it the care and then in the attention that it needed at the moment. And I think really it's like building a muscle. It's like going to the gym, right?
Yeah.
When you go to the gym, you don't have those muscles right away. So you have to be intentional. You have to make it like repetitive, right? You have to hold space for it. So I have a morning intentional routine with myself that I connect and just listen to my body and what does my body need. And every day can be different. So learning about your body and ways of sensations is super important. That's something I would always recommend my clients. Just also do something that body-wise that gives you motion. And that motion can be a simple walk. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy.
Yeah.
Right? So body messages, body sensations. Just listen more to your body one way or another.
Our bodies hold memories. I'm sorry.
Oh, say that.
Yeah.
The body keeps the score.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bodies hold memories.
Oh, yeah.
Right? There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. So the body itself has its own language. It really does when you really think about it and you start doing the work.
What I was going to mention was that as you're talking about kind of beginning to tune into the body, I think about yoga and what yoga has done for me. So I think the first time I ever tried yoga was maybe 10 years ago or something. And I always say that at the time I wasn't sipping the yoga Kool-Aid, right? Like I showed up to yoga and I was so annoyed because, you're in a pose and I'm like, oh my God, next, and it was just like this annoying thing for me. And now, so years went by, I didn't try it because I was closed off to it because I was like, it doesn't work for me. It's not for me. It's for some people, but not for me. And maybe, I think it was this year, at the beginning of the year, I was like, you know what? I feel things in my body. I don't know what to do with it. I can't just coach myself out of it, right? I need to address what's happening in the body. And so I went back to a restorative yoga class. And I loved this instructor because she was really attuned to, or helping people be attuned to their body.
Yeah.
And now what I observe, and I really let her guide us, right? Like I almost like allow people to guide. I trust. And now what I notice is that I have more tolerance for sitting in different positions, for breathing through them. And, because I go every week, once a week, it's nothing, like you said, it doesn't have to be anything wild, all day long. But now because I go every week, I notice that when I start to get annoyed or that annoyance of like, okay, next position, it's me. It's like, I have a lot on my mind, or I'm having a hard time sitting with this. And so everybody has their own way, but that's kind of what came up for me, is that if, for the listeners, if you've ever tried something that didn't work at first or at some point, they say don't knock it till you try it, and I tried it, but don't knock it until you try it multiple times, because it may be that the first time it's because it's new, you're like, oh, no me funcionó, it didn't work, right? So maybe try it again and see if, or go in with a different mindset. Let's try it a different time,
I think also it really depends on the season of life that you're in. Sometimes different modalities hit differently depending on where you are at, right? Because we might not be ready completely to open up whatever that is, that wound, and visit that, or that the body was trying to tell you at some point until now.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe you're more open to it now. So it's just really depends on the season of life you are at.
I agree.
Yeah, that's a big piece. In the way kind of I hear that, and kind of where I go to immediately is parts of myself haven't given permission just yet.
Yeah.
Like when we're walking into something difficult, this topic of feeling unstuck, maybe my intellectual part of myself, oh, I understand this. I can do it. Right. And then there's other parts of myself, maybe parts of me that I have carry still wounds, that carry pain, that protect myself from other stuff in life, whatever. Right. But there's this idea that there may be parts of myself that I haven't given full permission yet. And if I kind of throw them in that fire, they're going to get pissed. Right. And they're not going to respond well. And then that will come up.
Yeah.
And that can further lead to more avoidance or more, et cetera. Right. So it's like getting full permission of all the parts inside so that we can go into this yoga class, this body, more kind of body grounding. And I know that's a difficult thing to kind of go through, but just having that kind of this idea of like, there are parts of myself that maybe are on board, and there's other parts that maybe aren't just there yet. Right?
And that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
And that's okay. Meet yourself where you're at
Yeah.
without judging it, right? Just meet yourself where you're at and give yourself ability to be flexible.
Yeah.
To be flexible. To pivot.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that really like, strikes home, Alejandra. And the word that comes to mind is like vulnerability. You have to be vulnerable in order to give yourself permission.
Yeah, that's the big piece there, right?
Yeah.
It's like when you're walking into that vulnerability, that means you're accepting to sit in some fear. When you're accepting vulnerability, you're accepting discomfort.
Yeah.
You're accepting things that are going to be difficult, and knowing that you're walking into it.
Oh yeah.
Which is like, what?
Yeah.
No thanks.
Yeah.
I'm going to listen to more music and stuff, right? It's like, but it's that idea. Yeah, it's when we're looking at feeling unstuck, right? It's being vulnerable enough to accept and admit that these are going to be what I am struggling with is difficult.
Yeah.
And that's okay. There's parts of me that are ready to change,
Yeah.
ready to get unstuck. And there's parts of me that maybe still feel scared, feel fearful of what that work actually means that I have to do to get unstuck. And that is a hard truth to kind of really accept and get all of our parts inside permission to step into that difficult work to be unstuck. It's hard to do.
It is. With that vulnerability and body, when I had that moment that I shared, being really true to myself about how unhappy I was with school-based and how what was bringing me joy was private practice, and I was doing it on the side. But making that jump and that leap, oh my God, it takes like so much believing in yourself.
Yeah.
And that can be scary.
Yes.
It's so scary to make that shift, right? So yeah, the body sensations with the level of vulnerability that I had to be true with myself and with other factors that do play into our unstuckness too.
I think when I'm hearing everybody, it's like, I think that one of the first steps is acknowledging what you're not happy with. And I think that that's work that I'm doing on a personal level with clients, but really, a lot of our roles as clinicians is to validate, right? To support our clients. But I also think that validation, I think at least with myself, like I can validate myself with all of the reasons why I'm not doing something. And so I almost have to be uncomfortable enough. And so almost make like it's like we talk about like journaling gratitude, right? Like what are all the things you're grateful for to ground yourself? But I almost think I need to feel sometimes uncomfortable enough with, well, what is it that I'm really unhappy with to get moving?
Yeah.
I think a lot about, when I was working in community mental health, I loved the work that I did. It was the work environment that I was not happy with, that was activating my body. And it took a lot of vulnerability to admit I'm not happy here. And what does this all mean? Or I'm a clinician and I get home and I'm upset every day. Like, what? I also think of like my role, I'm the eldest daughter of immigrants. And so, let's say you ask my mom, describe Kaylee. Oh, Kaylee is so positive. She radiates light, she's this. And so it's like, and I love that my parents feel that way about me. And I am that in many ways. But then I think for me internally, what I receive is I can't be anything else but that. And so to admit I'm unhappy, it has been so hard. But I do think that part of the steps of getting unstuck is to admit to yourself, what are the things I'm not happy with? And what parts of these things that I'm unhappy with do I even have any sense of, and I do air quotes, of control in shifting? Because if I'm unhappy with how hot it is outside, I can't change the sun, but I can change what I wear, And so I don't know. I just think that that's part of it, but it does require so much vulnerability. And I think it leads us to, I think for all of you, we talk about these episodes before because we want to be intentional about the information that we're sharing with all of you. Yeah. And so we kind of each came up with, well, what are the things that matter, right? So body being one, vulnerability. And I think, Brandon, it was you that you said community, And so I do think finding your people that you can be vulnerable with, that you can say, hey, maybe with mom, not because she won't accept it, but because I'm not comfortable yet to share I'm so sad or I'm so upset. But who are those people that you feel comfortable with saying, you know what, I'm having a crappy day and I've had a crappy week, and turns out it's been a month, so it hasn't just been, one day, 1 week, it's been a month. Let me be real.
Probably been more than that. Yeah. It can be, it's like this pattern that you notice, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes when it's too close to us, it can feel like a level of judgment, right? And that you can't truly be yourself. So it is so important to have this layer of community outside of family. And sometimes because of our culture, that is frowned upon, right? Like, how can you say that and have this trust and safety with a friend, or maybe someone you just met like a year ago, but not share that with your parents?
Yeah. I also sometimes think it's like our own thing too, though, like I think about the example I'm giving and I'm like, it's me. I don't want to show my parents that I'm anything but happy. It's not them. I can definitely go to them and say, estoy triste. I'm sad, or sabes que I feel kind of lost right now, or you know what? Yes, we have a business and I'm loving this business, but I feel stuck in direction. It's not them. It's sometimes me, my tolerance, but maybe it's sometimes also, y'all, this is a therapy session. Maybe I'm putting it on my family, like, I don't know.
I think that's why it's important to have different communities within your life.
Yeah.
So like, I have my family community, I have you all as a community, and I have like these different like tribes in some ways, and they each serve a purpose.
Yes.
And it kind of reinforces some that are like, okay, let's play up the vulnerability piece, like, and so each tribe serves a purpose in the grander scheme of things. And so for myself, different communities have aided me, have challenged me. I've had conversations where we talk about like, oh, like if I was this way with like this other community, it would do really well. Maybe it wouldn't so in the other one, but it challenged us in different ways.
Yeah.
And so I think community, it keeps us on our toes, but really helps us to get unstuck in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and that's a big piece, right? Having different communities. certain communities will help us in certain times of our life, right?
Yeah.
And certain communities will have maybe limitations to how much effectiveness they can have in helping us get unstuck, right? And that's not a knock on those communities. Like, to your parents, it's not that they can't help you, but it's they're gonna serve the community are going to serve a certain level of help or help us get unstuck, and then we can also look for others, right? In addition, so it's like this adding of how many communities, like how can I get these to help me get unstuck? And there could be friendships, professional colleagues, family, parents,
Steve.
partners, all that stuff. Yeah.
That's right. I think it's also, part of it is accountability, right? Getting unstuck is holding ourselves accountable, to doing the things that we then observe we can do, right? Like, and I don't know. Again, to go back to things that aren't so deep, right? It could look like, I really want to be healthy, right? I'm unhappy, like, right? We identify, like, I'm unhappy with my health, right? And so it's like, okay, well, what can I do? Well, maybe I can go on a walk, or maybe I can stretch, or maybe I can drink more water, whatever. But then once you identify those things, well, then are we holding ourselves accountable for
Yeah.
it? And I think learning about yourself and what motivates you and what helps you stay accountable. I always say I need community. I think to have the initial ideas, those come from me. Like, what can I do? I can come up with that. But then the accountability piece, I think that's where I need those people, of, hey, this is something I'm struggling with. I'm going to try to do this. In fact, I did this with my best friend the other day. She was like, I have all these books and I never read them. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I start them and I don't finish them. And so she's like, okay, girl, every week I'm going to ask you, like, where are you at in your book? What have you learned? And so it's like having a community that can also support you in holding yourself accountable for having them help you. I think accountability is a big piece for getting unstuck, because we can do all of the steps, but if you don't go and do it, then what?
Accountability is very, very important. I had a friend recently reach out to me. She saw that I've been going back to the gym. And for me, being consistent with body health and just going to the gym, being active, comes in waves for me. Like, I can walk my dog every day, right? But I know that can only get me to a certain extent. And I know that I can start to feel a level of fatigue, and I need more. And that more is going to the gym, being intentional about weightlifting or any other type of exercise, right? So I decided, I'm like, I'm going to try this new gym, all women. And I'm like, okay. And I have been very consistent myself. And a friend and colleague of mine saw that I've been posting on social media how consistent I have been. And she's like, girl, where are you going? Because I need accountability partner. She's like, I want to join you. She's like,
See?
I want to come. And I was like, perfect. This is my schedule every week. You can come and join me if it fits with yours. If it doesn't, great. But she found a gym. She loved it. She's coming. We're going together.
Yay.
We do some classes together. Sometimes they don't fit and she goes on her own. But knowing that there's someone else in that gym that she knows, there's a level of like safety and accountability.
What I think about, Brandon, is for us, I think, to start our private practice, it was like, I think that was what did it. It's, for me, I think it was observing how unhappy I was at our previous job, noticing how it impacted my body, being vulnerable. And I actually talked to Brandon about it. He was my neighbor, at the time in like our desks, right? So our offices. And being able to share with him, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. I felt like I was like, what's happening to me? And being able to be vulnerable and talk about what's going on. And then coming up with ideas of like, well, what if we do a private practice? That came from him, right? And so that was the form of accountability that I think I needed in community, to do something else, to get out of a space that wasn't helping me feel good anymore. And I was feeling stuck.
Yeah. I think one of the things like I've learned from you though is that like you always tell me there's a solution to every problem. And it reinforces like this notion that like where there are no opportunities, you create them. And I think when we think about feeling stuck, it's like we feel like we have nowhere to go. Like it's like we're in a room with no doors or no windows.
Yeah.
But if you have a hammer, You can make a hole, you can make a window, you can make a door. It may not be the prettiest, but
Hey.
it's going to be a way out.
Yeah.
And so you can continue on in your journey. And I think through a lot of community and conversations and vulnerability and even body work, you're able to get to that point eventually.
You know, there's so much strength in saying that I'm stuck out loud.
Yes.
There's so, I know it sounds so like really oversimplified and very simple, but y'all that are listening, trust, say it out loud. Somebody will hear you. And if you're saying it with your community, with the people that you love and that you trust, something shifts inside. When we can say, I feel stuck. That was a great example between the two of you right now. You feel stuck. Let's start a private practice. Peace out, right?
That literally was how it went.
I could totally see that happening, by the way. But no, I'm serious. Like, you know, saying it out loud with your community, all the different individuals in that community from different parts, right? When you start saying that, it starts shifting stuff inside. Not only does that bring up, the community can help you feel accountable to kind of do this. It takes that vulnerability to say that I'm stuck out loud. That level of acceptance. Even if your stomach starts rumbling, even if you start feeling those heart palpitations, right? Or you start having those sweaty kind of palms, but that idea of saying it out loud to the community to help you keep accountable.
Yeah.
We start making some shifts.
Oh, yeah.
It needs to come out. It needs to be like your body's needing that to be released, right? It needs to come out of you. And I'm sure there's been a lot of times when people express, like, I feel this way, like in a group setting, right? And I'm sure someone in there is going to be like, me too.
Yes.
Me too, right? I am sure that you will not be the only one in that room that's going to feel the same.
It's like when you're in school, you don't want to ask that question. And after you ask the question, someone that's like, oh, thank goodness. Like I had that same question, just didn't want to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? There's not a stupid question or a dumb question. It is super important to just be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Just let it out.
Yeah.
Your body needs it to be released. Whatever that thought, whatever that emotion it is, whatever that feeling that needs to be felt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take that risk.
Yeah, it takes courage, right? It does take courage. And I think that even, you know, when I think of all of us here, the fact that we're all here, it's like we had to connect. Somebody had to take a risk to be like, hey, let me reach out to this person. And at some point, I think we all had to do that with one another. And that's how it landed that it was the four of us, right?
Yeah.
We decided that we wanted to build community, and we decided that we wanted to support others in evolving their blueprint, right? And saying, hey, these are all topics that we feel with you, you know, and we're wanting to learn and grow with you. And, you know, I think for our listeners today, I really want you all to think about, you know, where am I feeling stuck? It could be something silly and small, like what shoes are you going to wear? Or it could be, you know, am I stuck in my career? Am I stuck in my relationships? Am I stuck in friendships? Am I stuck in, you know, it could be anything under the sun, but beginning to think about what are the things that I'm unhappy about, right? And where am I at? You know, we talked about body, we talked about vulnerability, community, and taking accountability. So where can you begin your process with evolving your blueprint and getting unstuck? Thank you all so much for being here with all of us. Thank each and every one of you too, because I feel so connected to all of you when I hear your stories. Stay connected, stay tuned, and we can't wait to continue to evolve our blueprints with you.